Well, so thanks for joining us. But perhaps you can just quickly, for 10 minutes or so, throw out a couple of thoughts or talk to each other about whether you perceive yourself as a writer in Europe, perhaps a European writer. It was interesting when Nora mentioned that she's been traveling so much. So Nora actually stands for Germany, Switzerland, and Iceland, I guess. And Fabio before was telling me that he's actually spending some time in New York right now, also to learn English. So you know there's a language question in there. So just give us your thoughts on where you are in Europe, how you relate to maybe the other literatures and languages in Europe, who you like or not, or whether you know each other. I don't even know that. Ladies first. Nora
just may say that, and I really think and feel, and actually from my observation I realize that on the European continent it's nationality literatures. So there's a distinct Portuguese literature, there's a distinct Italian literature, distinct German, and of course within the countries it's many variations. There's a great spectrum of what's going on a literature base and what's happening and who can actually live off it, because there's a funding system behind it or not, from what I realized. Because the first year I started as this director of this artist in residency house, we had Portuguese guests, and while they were living with us, Luís when they were living with us, pretty much in 2010, the support system for Portuguese writers pretty much crashed down. And a lot of these Portuguese guests, which we had, six in numbers, they actually decided to pretty much stay in either Germany or went to Sweden for a little while to get away from the situation that all of a sudden there was no funding anymore. And by funding I mean prices that actually have higher sum of money behind them. Also translation funding, so that when your work is done, it gets translated. And right now I can say, about Germany I can say, this is still intact, but the money all in all is decreasing. But of course also system, or you know, the people giving out the money, they of course say, well, maybe artists become even better when they're under pressure, you know, and when we take the money away from them. And so, you know, I often have these political discussions, and of course I'm on a very different side of the spectrum there, and I'm all for funding and supporting the arts. But in fact, it's going down. That's maybe just an idea we're having now. But it's very versatile. These different nationalities and these different strong national literatures are not so interconnected. I mean, I think we all perceive ourselves as Europeans, but we still have very different approaches to literature, and the scenes are very different. In Germany, an author can live off the readings he does. No, you hardly ever make enough money by selling a book. With poetry, you can forget about it. But performing, I earn a lot. I'm not earning a lot of money, but I'm earning my living with readings. I'm very much like a singer, you know, singing my songs wherever I go. Yeah, and being asked to do performances.
Yeah, good.
But
where do you read? Where do you do your performances?
Well, in Literaturhäusern, and that's something I don't know exactly if that tradition exists. In Italy, Portugal, in France, but
libraries?
Libraries, yes, and also clubs. It has really appeared out of nowhere pretty much that publishing houses really start taking the literature where the people actually are to shorten their ways of confronting themselves. Yeah, and so all of a sudden you have these club readings.
In school as well?
Yes, in schools as well. But that's a real choice you have to make, because normally I find the schools poorly prepared. In Germany, it's horrible. It's like teachers having a free lesson, and they just push an author in front of them and say, I have no idea how to pronounce her name. She was chosen by the school's principal. Here she is. She's female, obviously. I don't know what she does, but enjoy an hour with her. And it's like, so it happens.
It hasn't been like that before in Deutschland. I mean, this is not...
I know, yeah. And I say, where's the tradition of, you know, you wouldn't handle Goethe like that.
5 years I heard very disappointing references to the school systems. They have some problem in Deutschland.
Well, they just realize that they can't, they have to change and they have to evolve and they have to look at other countries around them, how they do it and how they, yeah, a little bit. Even though still the Germans are so proud of their school system. I'm a product of the school system, so I'm actually quite formed.
Yeah.
No, but you're right, absolutely. Just have to be alert. But I'm sorry, I've been babbling on where things are happening, and how and what. Fabio?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. But basically, it's quite impossible for me seeing myself as geographically localized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was born in Turin, a specific city in the north of Italy, with a great literary tradition, one for all, Italo Calvino, okay? And in me there is something of that literary tradition. But I was born in Italy and I write in Italian, and in me there is something of the literary tradition of all my country. I grew up in a period during which Europe was growing. Okay, I traveled a lot around Europe. I read many European writers, and so I guess I guess that my literature has European roots. For example, my first novel was a story about a young Romanian boy who traveled across Europe between Italy, France, Germany, France, and Spain in search of his grandpa that used to work as an actor in the street. And then I grew up in a period during which the globalization, the cultural globalization was growing. I was able to travel all around the world and read many writers for all the countries. This book, Nel mare ci sono I coccodrilli, is a story about a young Afghan boy, okay, a 5 years long journey from Afghanistan to Italy, of a young boy, a young Hazara boy. So now I'm ready for the solar system or the space, I don't know. So if the question is who am I, the answer is I
have the Rover curiosity on Mars. So
yeah. So I guess perhaps I am a multi identity writer. Okay. So.
Well, I'm José, and I'm Portuguese, and I feel that as Portugal, I'm as connected to Europe today as we have ever been, as I have ever been. At some point, Portugal was very detached from Europe. Also, geographically, Portugal is in this little corner of Europe, surrounded by the ocean and by Spain. And we don't have a very close relationship with Spain. We have a much closer relationship with the ocean. And that made Portugal look for many centuries more into Africa or into Brazil than into Europe. That started to change in mid-80s, probably, when Portugal became a member of European Union. And I was grown up enough to remember people saying, now we are Europeans, as if we were not Europeans before that. That was very commonplace saying in Portugal. Now we are part of Europe, now we are Europeans. But personally, I'm a bit in the same circumstance but in a bit differently, since I am very related to the place where I was born. I was born in the south interior of Portugal, in a very rural area, and I lived there until I was 18 years old. And that was very, that had a big effect on me, and it left big mark in my life. But at the same time, I was living there, and I was playing guitar in a hardcore, grindcore band. I mean, by this I mean I was living in this traditional scenario, but having access and living a culture that was a bit detached from that. So, and I believe that is in a way a bit of a history of Portugal in itself, in the sense that Portugal is a country that that has strong and deep traditional roots, but it's part of the world today. I mean, we are part of this contemporary world, and we are part of the culture that in a way sweeps Europe. Even though, and this is a question that is interesting in a festival like this, even though it's true that we have Italian literature, German literature, French literature, Spanish literature, Romanian literature, and they are in a way very separate, since we have all different languages, and I'm sure that most Italian readers cannot read German novels as much as most Portuguese readers don't have access to French novels unless they are translated. That's why, I mean, I don't know if you have this experience, but me personally, whenever I get to participate in a debate or a talk in North America, being it United States or Canada, we always end up discussing the value of translation. And I feel that in Europe, we have sort of the duty to defend translation whenever we get here. Since without translations, I would be completely illiterate. Without translations, I would have never read 80% of all the books I've read. And so, I mean, among them, a lot of European authors, of course. But as I was saying, I have this very big connection with the place where I was born, but I'm since always a big consumer of culture that is completely international. And today, I'm in this position in which I'm here in Toronto with you. Last week I was in Macau, China, and Thursday I'm going to Mumbai, India.
Oh, wow.
So that talks a bit about what it is, things for me. And in the 16th November I'll be having a new book, which is a non-fiction book I wrote about North Korea. So that's how things are in terms of geography for me right now.
But do you still feel connected to where you come from?
Totally. I feel that it's I always see it as the center of my world, like that place where you put the compass, you know. I mean, when I'm out of there, I feel that it doesn't count as much as life, you know.
Okay.
I feel that things go from there. I mean, but that's maybe because it's also a region that is very connected with the land and with all these little villages in South Portugal. They have a square, which is the main square, and that square is usually a circle. And that circle, usually in the middle, has something which is shaped as a target. You know, if you're Portuguese, you know what I'm speaking about. And that target is like the center, you know.
Oui, bon. Moi, je suis le seul à avoir un mal fou à pouvoir m'exprimer. Tout le monde parle anglais. Moi, je suis, pourtant, je peux pas dire que je sois franco-français. Je viens d'Afrique du Nord. Je suis né en Tunisie, d'un milieu disparate. La famille de mon père, ce sont plutôt des Tunisiens berbères ancrés là depuis des générations et des générations. Du côté de ma mère, ils viennent d'Algérie. De ma grand-mère maternelle, ils viennent du Maroc. Certains ont dû passer par l'Espagne, c'est tout le monde de séfarade, mais il n'y a pas que le monde séfarade. Chez les Juifs d'Afrique du Nord. Oui, excusez-moi.
So it seems I'm the only one here not speaking English, and maybe the only one also not totally 100% or Franco-French, as we say in French. You know, Franco-French is when you're like, how do you say, Franco-Français?
Yeah, Franco-French.
So I was born in Tunisia, and my family has very
Diverse roots. Diverse roots.
Diverse roots. My grandmother from Algeria, and some from Morocco, and others from Tunisia, and from Sepharad origins also. J'en étais là.
J'ai été bercé par l'arabe quand j'étais enfant.
When he was a child, he was in the Arab language.
On ne me l'a pas appris, mais l'arabe, je le comprends un peu. Je comprends plein de langues. On parlait italien, on parlait le maltais, on parlait toutes les langues. Et il y a eu l'exil, et dans les années 50, il y a eu l'exil, on s'est retrouvés à Paris avec des gens qui hagards, qui se retrouvent dans le Paris de la guerre d'Algérie, qui va se déclarer. Donc un Paris assez pathétique, surtout qu'on sortait de l'occupation, on sortait de Vichy.
In the 1950s, in Ménilmontant, and it was the Paris of the la guerre d'Algérie, the Algerian War, what do you say, the French War, or the war in Algeria, and everybody was. And it was exile, and poor people coming in a new land and being so terrified by all that was happening to them, and all this happening in after the Second World War and after Vichy and French collaboration, and so after a really tough period for Jewish Tunisian people coming to France at that time.
Et là, je suis né dans la langue française. C'est l'école publique obligatoire, l'école laïque, publique obligatoire. Je suis né dans la langue française. La langue française a été mon espace, moi qui venais de nulle part, avec des parents parlant arabe, avec des gens dans un désert, puisqu'on se retrouvait vraiment. C'était vraiment la première génération de l'exil. On s'est retrouvé un peu dans l'isolement total, quoi. Et c'est la langue française qui m'a éveillé au monde. Et c'est devenu la seule langue pour moi, d'une certaine manière.
Okay, so
J'ai fait plein d'efforts pour apprendre toutes sortes de langues. Tout se passe dans le français, c'est l'échec absolu dans toutes les langues. Pourtant, j'ai fait des tentatives. J'ai fait 10 ans d'anglais. Je suis incapable de vous dire 3 mots.
So in this exile, he was kind of reborn in the French language, and so French became everything, or the whole world. And so he ever says, as a joke, that he tried to learn so many languages and he never could, because somehow it had to be French, but French excluded all other languages, but not literature, of course, but French. And so he was like reborn in French.
Ce qui ne m'empêche pas de me passionner pour la littérature, toutes les littératures d'Europe et du monde, et d'avoir écrit dans tous les genres, des romans, des pièces de théâtre, des essais sur la peinture et l'art, la poésie. La poésie, c'est la source. Et vraiment, de chercher ailleurs ma vie d'écrivain. Je voyage beaucoup, je m'étonne de tout ce qui peut se passer dans la littérature et dans les arts partout dans le monde. Donc l'Europe, c'est un très beau village, mais il y a aussi l'Afrique, où nous sommes allés, il y a aussi, là on part en Inde dans un mois. Ouais, tu dis ce que tu veux.
He's having good time.
Je me connais bien.
J'ai perdu le début, excusez-moi. So what? So he wrote so many books, novels, short stories, poetry. Of course, poetry was the beginning of everything, but also essays and theater, and with a tremendous curiosity for all literatures from all over the world and from all cultures and civilizations. And he went to Africa and to so many places in the world. And so it seemed that the only language would be French, but the curiosity and interest is really for the whole world and in all its diversity.
Mais on fait une répétition pour demain.